Welcome to this season of the Broadway Podcast, where here we give you a more real-time point of view of people who work, interact, and entertain here in Broadway, Nashville. We get the opportunity to provide hot gossip, but we also take the opportunity to provide a more positive outlook on people who call Nashville their home. Ride with us as we take you down a trip on Broadway.
This is the life we choose, life we choose. And honestly, I wouldn't want it any other way. I've been doing just fine, alright now. This is the life we choose. This is the life we choose.
Hey, Paul. How you doing, man?
Awesome, David. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming to the podcast today, man. I kind of want to get a little bit more insight about what you got going on and kind of like get a feel for like, the entertainment industry as far as the behind the scenes is like. I know you do a lot of sound tech, a lot of engineering, stuff like that. I kind of want to get into that kind of thing. But firstly, let me know how you got to Nashville, like brought you here.
Well, it kind of all started when I was in high school or going into high school. I was a fairly misfit kid. I didn't really do much. Just trying to find my way. And eventually, over some time, like I have dyslexia. So I had meetings every year to discuss like, how I was doing and all this other garbage as to, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with my life. So that way they could guide me in the best direction. And for some reason, I pointed away from it in every way I could. But in the meeting, one of the people in the meeting, like teachers, advisors, all this stuff, said to me, like, have you ever thought about public speaking or theater, taking a theater class? Like, hell no.
Yeah.
Like, no way. And my mom's there too. And she's like, oh, you'd be so great at that. Why don't you like take a look at it, think about it? Like, no way in hell am I getting up in front of people and trying to, and performing or, I was terrified of being in a spotlight.
Yeah.
Hated presenting, hated all that stuff. My mom was persistent on it. She said, hey, you're going to do this. And for that whole summer, I bitched and moaned about it. I said to her, I was like, listen, this is not for me. I will do anything to get out of this and do something else. Like, what do I got to do? And she was so close to pulling me out of it, but I ended up going. She's like, just try it. And I was like, okay, fine. I show up the first day. I hid. Like, I hid in all the corners and everything at the high school. It was my first day. And again, I was a misfit kid. No one really, I dealt with bullying and, people not necessarily being so great to me. So showing up in a theater classroom or being seen in that just seemed like a, social suicide for me at that point. And I remember I left the first day and I was like, I like it. It's fun. There's just people who like, I didn't know, but I wanted to get to know more. And I felt like I could, I felt safe in that room. Weeks go by, I'm enjoying it. And I'm like finding enjoyment out of all that, acting and taking on other characters and stuff like that. It was always the reading that was a problem. Like I said, I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
So eventually someone asked me, hey, there's a play coming up that you should audition for, musical.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, fuck that. I'm not doing that shit. It's like, why would I already felt like I was under a microscope with all the other people in my high school in a way that like, I just didn't want to be seen. I wanted to be avoided. And I, was just not social and dealt with a lot of shit from, I had friends that were football players and their friends were always up my ass about stuff. My mom convinced me again, just try it. And once I did, like audition, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. Going up in front of a bunch of people, a director and peers and acting. like the class was different because it was just a small group of people.
Yeah.
It's like we're all learning. It's intro class.
Right.
And then I got one of the main parts in the show, and I was like, okay, well now it's like, now I got these 3 months that I got to get my shit together, and I'm going to eventually have to go in front of a crowd full of people and do this. So I just took it in stride and I did it. And I remember being backstage, and this continued every time I did a performance after that, and sometimes still this day.
Mhm.
It was like, I'm terrified backstage. Like, it's like anything you have to prepare for, anything that you care about or you're nervous about, presentation, UFC fighters going to camp and then leading up to a fight, or, any kind of like a race.
Yeah.
You're like, all this is leading up to this moment. And now it's here. Curtain's about to open.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And then the curtain opens. I walk out on stage, and I remember I've been doing this for months. Like, we've been rehearsing, we've been doing all this. And all of a sudden, all those nerves, and I've always had nerves and been freaked out about doing things and always complacent. It was the one time that I was forced. I had to do it, because if I didn't, the show wasn't going to go on. I don't like letting people down. And once I went on that stage and started saying the lines, this is almost like I was meant to do this.
Yeah.
And, I go through the show, and, I have my moments on stage where I'm singing solos and stuff like that, and acting.
You were singing too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this is where it all came together for me. It was like stuff I've never done before in front of people. All of a sudden now I'm, it's becoming, a passion for me. And that curtain closes and audience is cheering. Like, I did the curtain call and everything.
Yeah.
It was like, I found peace in it, and I found like a drive and addiction for it at the same time.
Right.
And it was never, I did probably about 12, 13 shows, not including choir, band, and, I'm a musician as well. So
theater
gigs.
came first. Basically.
Theater came first. That's what made me find my passion for performing.
Gotcha.
And it was never really about me. I mean, obviously there's some sort of selfishness that everybody has with being on stage or creating something. And you'll hear people say this all the time, it's about the audience. For me, it is 100% about the audience. Because it's, even to this day, whether I'm playing guitar or I'm behind the scenes working on something, I'm a part of a project, and a thing that seems damn near impossible when it starts out as a little thing. Like when it starts out as read through or the first rehearsal or, a couple notes or a couple lyrics. You're part of that first thing. And that little idea, that start can change, that can have an effect on people in 2 weeks, 3 months, a year, however long it takes to cultivate. And I found passion in, taking people away from their lives, whether it was 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's like everybody has shit that they go through every day.
Yeah.
And, being in this town, you see it all the time. It's a tourist town.
Yeah.
People come here for vacation. They want a different experience.
Right.
And as someone who works in entertainment and who's involved, whether they're on or off stage, you are a part of taking people away from their everyday bullshit lives. Whether,
Sure.
they have a drink in their hand or whatever. And so I found guitar about halfway through high school. And I was like, there were a couple moments where I was like, I picked up on the acting and the singing, the dancing and all that stuff, and the performing as a whole.
Right.
Like, what about this music thing? Like, understanding music. Because, again, dyslexia. I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to read sheet music. I don't know how any of this works. And I found guitar at a great time because it was like I had this huge bug of theater.
So was this high school that you found the guitar?
Yeah, it was high school. It was I think my sophomore year.
Okay.
And when I found it, it was like, shit, this is like just as addicting as theater. But it was personal because, it's something that I learned how to do in my bedroom.
You taught yourself.
Yeah, I taught myself for most of the time. I mean, I had mentors and teachers, which I'll get into later. But it's like, so it became so personal because it was like, this is something that I can do, like writing a script or
Right.
something like that, or writing a book about yourself. Playing guitar to me is like I'm putting a piece of myself out in the world without saying a word.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or singing too. I mean, when you feel it, it's a really special thing. It took me a long time to get there. And, I started late compared to a lot of my, colleagues and peers and stuff.
Mhm.
But so I found that, and I was doing everything in live arts and, everything from acting, singing, dancing, playing instruments, being in bands, and recording. And it came to a point in high school where I was like, I look at colleges and all this shit. And I became complacent in the theater stuff where I was like, I don't know if I really want to
Yeah.
like audition my whole life as an actor. I wanted to go to New York. I want to do all this stuff. And then it came to a point where I was like, I don't know if I want to. Because looking at how those people lived, it just didn't seem like it was
Yeah.
for me. It was just a lot of stress and not knowing where your next paycheck's going to come from. So I became complacent in that for a little bit. And I decided that I wanted to go for audio engineering.
Mhm.
I didn't know where. I didn't do much research on it, but I remember I went to a job shadow and they said there's this school in Nashville called Belmont University.
Yeah.
Belmont University, okay. They said it's a great school, audio engineering. It's basically music business Harvard.
Mhm.
Oh, that sounds cool. So I looked into it and I found myself, visiting, loving it. And then next thing you know, late summer of 2019,
Mhm.
I was down here and I was doing it. It was a scary thing because, I'd never left my hometown. I was, my mom was pissed
Yeah.
initially when I brought it up because it's like, you want to move from your small hometown 800 some miles away. Like an hour or two is one thing, but
Yeah.
13 hours, 14-hour drive, completely different. I'm on my own.
Yeah.
And, it was an experience because, I didn't come from a background where a lot of the other Belmont students came from.
Oh yeah, because Belmont's like a private school, right?
It's a private school. It's a religious school,
expensive,
very
too.
expensive. And, I found myself like, I tried to find people that were doing the thing that I wanted.
Mhm.
And, that had its, ups and downs.
Mm.
I never really dealt with egos. Even in theater, I did, but I kind of rose above it because it was just like one of those things, like, especially in high school.
Yeah.
It's high school. And, that doesn't really matter. Once I got to college, I found that these egos are developing into personalities.
Oh yeah.
And it's like people showing up to class, like, after a couple months with scarves and sunglasses on in class. And it's like, who are you trying to be? You're not there yet.
Yeah.
And people that had been doing it much longer time than me, like at that point, I had only been playing guitar for 2 or 3
Yeah.
years. But I knew that I had a drive for performance and, the audience. The problem was, I didn't realize it, but I had a lot of growing I needed to do. I was from a small hometown. I didn't know a whole lot about the music stuff, and I didn't know a whole lot about people.
Mhm.
Like the people who I was dealing with in my age group.
Which was at that point 22, 23?
No, when I was, so I'm born in 2001. So like my class, everybody was about, 18,
Yeah.
19, right around there. And everybody came from this background of, most people had either big scholarships because they were,
Mhm.
just savants at whatever they were doing. And they got picked to be there. And they were like, oh yeah, Berkeley. And I chose Belmont because they gave me the best deal. And here I was, I didn't have much of a musical background,
Mhm.
but I had, I had the creativity and the drive to learn. And when it came down to learning from other people, everybody was kind of closed off.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't expect. It was like, the ego and everything. And, there were some people that weren't like that, but there were a lot of people that were like that.
Yeah.
And that really turned me off. And it made me scared to really push through college and make those leaps. Because there were so many people that were so
Now,
good.
did you finish school at Belmont?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And when I finished, like fast forward to my senior year. I had I had a life-changing experience.
Mhm.
And, I was down in a hole, like mental health, not good. Physical health, not good. I had bad habits. I was smoking pot every day.
Mhm.
Wasn't drinking, but I was just like, I saw myself going down a bad path.
Yeah.
And, I was like 30 pounds heavier. I had long hair. I wasn't taking care of myself. And when that thing happened, it wrecked me. It really did. It put me in a dark, dark place, like
Yeah.
even deeper into that hole than I was before.
Now, what actually happened?
I went through a breakup,
Okay.
and it was like, I won't go into too much detail about
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
only because,
Out of respect, for
out
sure.
of respect for the
Yeah.
other person, But when that happened, it was like, that was a 5-year relationship. I was
Mhm.
with that girl since high school.
Mhm.
And we were together all throughout college up until my senior year. When that happened, I saw myself going 2 different directions. Either I was going to continue down this path and I was going to end up somewhere where I did not want to be. And I already wasn't where I wanted to be.
Right.
I wasn't going where I wanted to go. And so I chose option B, which was to turn it all around and live life like I never did before.
Mhm.
And that started with, taking care of myself. I started going to the gym. I used all that energy from that breakup
Right.
to just, find, peace, try and find peace in things that I never thought I'd be able to do. Things like going to the gym or eating healthy or having just a healthy lifestyle. And I had to put down guitar for probably 2 or 3 months, which I'd never done, but it was too painful to pick up anything like, whether like things I loved to do at the
Yeah.
time, playing video games or going to play guitar, jam sessions or whatever. Everything that I had done during that relationship was too painful to do. So I had to find some other things.
Mhm.
And, my dab pen broke off my desk. It fell off and I was like, I guess I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Because that's a sign. So I went to the gym and I went every day, sometimes 2 times a day. And, I was always freaked out over everything. I was always trying to have a stranglehold on life. Like I couldn't, things like, even things I couldn't control. And then what the gym taught me, and that period in my life taught me was, peace, finding peace in accountability. And what I mean by that is people struggle to have peace in their life because there are things that we can control and then there are things that we can't.
Right.
And I had control over neither of those things. And that freaked the hell out of me. But once I started to gain control in the things that I had some sort of influence on in my life, whether that was my health, physical, mental, whatever, I then developed, this peace in knowing that there are these things I can't control. And I will always struggle
Yeah.
to overcome those. But at least I have this foundation, this better, stronger foundation that if those things go wrong, I know I'm doing these things right and I will be able to overcome them.
Right. And that's gym, eating healthier.
Yeah,
working
just
out.
like, lifestyle things.
Yeah.
Things that we can control. And, there's some people that have isolated problems depending on the person. But, you got to find it in yourself to be able to do, the hard work.
Yeah, for sure.
And once you do that, everything else becomes so much easier. I put down guitar for a while, and all of a sudden I'm like, after I went through that change, I was like, I'm playing better than I ever have. I
Yeah.
have all these new ideas. And it all opened up for me. So at that point, it just became,
A lifestyle.
I broke through the ceiling I thought I had.
Yeah.
Now where can we go from here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
that's-
now with that being said, and you went through that hardship in your life, and then you found like a new like discovery of yourself.
Mhm.
And then I'm assuming after college you decided to further pursue the music career, or did you just decide to jump into something else?
So here's what's funny about the music industry. a lot of industries, especially creative, is that you got a lot of people that you got to rely on to make these things happen. It's not just you. And a lot of people put it on themselves. Like, there are songwriters that show up to writers' rounds every day. Writers' rounds being, they sit down, they sign up on a list, they go on a stage at a coffee shop or whatever with 4 or 5 other songwriters on stage, and then they do a round, which is, each person sings a song.
Now, are you doing writers' rounds too? Or?
I'm not. But, there are those people that are doing that all on their own. I had this audio engineering degree from Belmont, and I had a job lined up and everything. And, it was like at a point where it's like, okay, everybody's finding their job or whatever. I can't, and now I have mine. And, it's getting solidified. I'm doing things for them and giving them ideas as to how they should operate. And then they just dropped on me.
Yeah.
Radio silent. Now it's May, and everybody else has taken the jobs for that season. And here I am. I got no job.
And music in Nashville, well, industry in Nashville in general is very seasonal.
Yeah.
So like if you don't catch certain things at a certain time of the year, you kind of miss out for a whole other calendar year. So like I kind of understand where you're coming from with that, because I've heard other stories about artists or like musicians saying that like they didn't get the job up until like, I guess, May or whatever. And then they kind of just like stop looking for talent until the next go around. Can you kind of like give me more like of insight, like how that actually goes down?
So like a lot of people work freelance in this industry. I mean, as an audio engineer, a lot of people have their own studio or they are hired gun.
Yeah.
Which means, they make their networking connections and, they meet one person, they record this one person. Oh, you did a really good job. I'm going to put you on to this person.
Yeah.
And then, you make your network that way. And then there are people that, interview at studios or record labels and stuff like that. And then they get their typical
big
job.
break or whatever.
They get their, what you would call a big break in one way or another. That's when you're working on your own, like for me.
So are you fitting in the category of your own or like what?
Well, so my main drive is music and performing. It's always been and always will be. Right now I work a job where I'm working behind the scenes at some Broadway bars where I do the audio video stuff, whether it be setting up live bands or, getting the video going with the lights or whatever, just the production aspect of it, which I have a background in already. And so I'm using, a lot of people come in, especially Belmont, not to shit on Belmont or anything, but a lot of those kids that come in have a lot of stuff taken care for them already, whether it be by their family or, they.
It wasn't talking shit. That's just being real.
Like, it's being real.
That's what
and
it is.
It's, they have it taken care of.
Yeah.
They don't need to worry about a whole lot. I forget what the statistic is, but I want to say about 70% of students that go to Belmont, from what I understand, either have, their parents pay for it or they got some crazy scholar.
Yeah.
Me, I'm out on loan. So I can't just go to writers' rounds every week and just, show up or,
so
just solely rely on, when that next gig is coming. I have to have a job.
Yeah.
So that's where that audio engineering degree comes in.
Okay.
I'm using it as a stepping stone. I want to network with people. I want to meet people. And so far I've been doing that. And I've been meeting some of the most amazing people post-college.
Yeah.
And thank God, because college really put a bad taste in my mouth with how this industry was, or at least it seemed like.
Yeah.
And I met all these people. I meet all these Broadway musicians and people that do session work, go on tour when they're not on Broadway. And it opened my mind and it made me feel like the way these people talk to me and the way that I have developed these relationships makes me feel like, I've been here alone my entire time here. And now I feel like finally there are people looking out for me.
That's great.
That are in my best interest.
Yeah.
Which, is just refreshing after being here for almost 5 years.
Yeah, well, it takes a little time anyways, too, because, I've been here for 8 years and I'm just now getting my foot planted as far as like what I want to do with things. This podcast has been one of them, and a lot of other things I got going on the side. But sometimes, like, just letting things just like pass you by that doesn't need to be in your life is more important than like trying to stress something that doesn't belong there. It's like right now you're in the music production, like working at these bars, whatever, like that. Does that give you opportunity to be able to still do your own music? Are you still working on your own music?
So the way that my particular place works is I can't play at that bar or those bars if I'm working.
Yeah.
However, those connections I've made, you know, I record and I'm hired gun. I have people that call me up every once in a while for gigs, whether it be live or in the studio. And I love that. I want more of that. But, you know, you're as a musician, as a hired gun, you are only playing as much as you are demanded.
Yeah.
So not only do I got to put on a good show and do a good job, but I also got to, you know, keep in touch and I got to do all this stuff.
Right. The networking part too.
Yeah. And, you know, artists love them to death, but they are not the most consistent. You know, they got their own shit going on, which I understand because I do too. But when I said, like, you know, you're relying, you know, you got a lot of people that you're relying on to make a thing work.
Yeah.
And, you know, any entertainment or any business, it's a business. You're relying on those people and it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
You get told one thing and then eventually, like, you know, you're left waiting and you're like, hey, whatever happened to that thing? It's like, oh yeah, funding didn't come through.
Yeah.
Or I've shown up for gigs, you know, where I was told I was going to get paid. I was going to play this amount of songs. Or like, you know, 2 days before, they're like, oh, you know, I just decided I'm going to play acoustic. I don't need you. Sorry. Well, I already took off work for that day. So I'm not getting paid now and I'm missing work. Not cool.
You gotta start getting contracts with these people, I guess.
No, I know. And, you know, I've learned that lesson.
Yeah.
I've already learned that lesson. It's, you know, it's a tough one to learn because you want to operate on good faith. I mean, I'm somebody who operates on good faith, but
I think
again,
that era of life is gone. You have to put things in writing and paper because what happens is that, like in college, you're going to start seeing that come back full circle in the professional life because you're hoping that it's going to be by like word, like, you know, faith, whatever, or like just hoping that they're going to like be on their word. And then it turns around as not. Like you want to make sure like you don't let a lot of more time go past you. So like I feel like with your music and like whatever you got going on with like having gigs going on in town, always have something solidified on paper because what happens is if you excuse me, if you don't, then that time that you've took away from work or that time you take away from like writing down music or setting up a venue, you're missing it because you waste your time with this person, this entity that did not have your best interests and you don't have anything on paper to like protect you. So I think like moving forward, anything we should always have, especially when it comes to our professional careers, we need to have things in writing because we don't want, at this stage of our lives, we don't want to, time is not something you can just get back, you know, easy like that. So I guess my advice is to like always have something in writing because you don't want to miss an opportunity or be missed out on opportunities because you wasted your time with things that you shouldn't have wasted your time with. What I want to get into is lastly, before our time expires, is that what are you doing now as far as your personal music career is concerned?
So my personal music, I'm working on stuff for my own writing and I've got some people who I have in rotation. You know, I like to play a lot in East Nashville. And that's kind of like where all the artists hang out and all the working class musicians. I say working class musician because there's the Taylor Swifts, there's the Brad Paisleys, there's the Luke Combs, and those are great people. But the working class musician are the people that are on Broadway or that are showing up to sessions for a check from, you know, whatever record label or, you know, that's the working class. Yeah. That's where I want to be. I mean, one other thing, there are utility guitar players and then there are, or what I call utility guitar players, which are the people that can play anything, like whatever. It's like, you know, they show up to Luke Combs session and get that sound and do, you know, however he wants it done.
Right.
I want to be known as the guy that people call for when they're like, we don't need this sound. We need what Paul does.
Mhm.
Because I have developed, I learned on my own, and I've had mentors who try to stop sound like that country bullshit or whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, fine. And I found my way in trying to find my sound,
Mhm.
which that's every musician's thing, finding their sound and where their niche and their pocket in this industry. And I want to be known for that. And that's where, I want to play Broadway and I want to do all that stuff. That's something I'm working on too. But as life happens, I'm waiting on life to happen. I'm going to start working on my own stuff, my own music.
Yeah,
And-
that's what I was gonna say, because I'm like, why would you? I'm not gonna say why would you want to like perform on Broadway, but I feel like if you want to be a true independent artist, and I guess like I feel like Broadway is like a tool that you use after you make your own like creation of music,
Mhm.
and then to be able to broadcast it on Broadway. What's such a shame for me, I feel like, is that because I do work at these bars too on Broadway, and I'm like, I don't want to come here to listen to you cover a song that I've heard a million times. I want to see you as an artist. And like what sometimes like really shocks me is that like we'll get some people in there that like are amazing. I'm like, oh my God, where they come from? Like they're singing original music. They're revitalizing the music. How like what's it called? Like you like smash up the music or whatever and like kind of like make it like a different kind of like
Mhm.
whole another genre. Like that's what I want to see when I go to Music City on Broadway. I don't want to particularly hear Taylor Swift being overplayed by somebody else on Broadway or Luke Bryan or whoever. Like no offense to them, they're great artists, but like what I'm saying is that like when we see these independent working class artists, isn't it doing them a disservice by not making like sing their own music?
Well, and that's the thing is like a lot of them, everybody who I talk to, most of them are sick of it. And like they show up, it's a job. You show up and you have a shift, and that shift is, anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. You're on that stage and you're playing.
I
per
hate that
request.
though. I feel like musicians are the ones that like out of all the people that work in the working class are the most rebellious, and they would never go to just a job when they know how hard it is to like get to where they are in general, like as far as because it's such a competitive, area.
Yeah.
Musicians, and then they're also like very like edgy people. Like they're like almost like rebellious. Like they don't take shit for nothing. Like they're always going to do their own thing. And I don't want them to become the blue collar working class musicians. I want them to be the rock and rollers. You know what I mean? Almost cause like when I come downtown or like when any of my friends or any of our people from out of town come here, it gets very repetitive. I want to hear so-and-so's song. I can just turn on the radio, like I want to get like, for me, that's why I keep asking you like what you have going on for your music, because we have social media, we have TikTok, we have Instagram Live, we have all these streaming services that are free that we can put our music or we can put our crafts out into the world without having to sit down in a corporate space in a non-corporate profession. Because music is not a corporate profession when you really think about it. It's corporated, but it's not a corporate profession. So like, I hate to see the music industry go that route, because I feel like it's doing them a disservice by just clocking in and just plugging in.
Well,
do you agree?
I hear what you're saying, and there are people that eventually, they get sick of it or whatever, but it's a way to keep out of your, having to get that 9 to 5,
Yeah, because I mean, I get it. It gets expensive in these cities too, and you have to have a job to sustain.
And they make a living wage doing that shit too. And for me, the reason why I want to do Broadway, I have that actor in me, and I want to I love embodying, that artist, or like trying to put on a show that the people will like based on. Now
you mean Broadway New York? Or you mean Broadway Nashville?
Well, I mean Broadway Nashville.
We gotta be specific when it comes to that, because you said acting and stuff.
Acting,
I don't see any actors on Broadway Nashville.
Right, of course. Yeah, I mean, but with that acting thing, it's like it's the performance for me.
Yeah,
and I love playing other people's songs. Not everybody does, because they have their stuff that they want to push.
Right, and you can also play their songs, but put your flair into them. Of
course,
it's times where I come downtown and they're not even putting their own flair in it. It's just like robots, and that's where I'm at with this. Like I don't even mind if you replay these huge artists' music, but if you're gonna do that, give me Paul version of this song. like put in the work. Cause I feel like anybody can just get on stage and just like learn the chords and just sing it almost similar to what they hear the actual artist singing it to. Like put your own flair in it. You know, if you're a rock and roller, throw a little, you know, a little longevity into it, like, or whatever the case may be. But like, I just really hate for, like I said, like, cause when you talk about the college thing and you talked about how I put a bad taste in your mouth, if it doesn't change, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right.
So if you want change as far as like feeling that way, like don't just go into the normality of things. I feel like that's just my personal opinion about it. Because like when you actually get the opportunity to put your life, you put your work into the world, and then you get to see it back at you, are you gonna be proud of it? You know what I mean? Like, are you gonna say, "Oh, I just worked for these people who just wanted me to clock in and just do this, do that, do this"?
Well, and like I said, it is a job. But the way I look at it is, as a Broadway musician, your job is to work for the bar. Your job is to keep people in there, take requests, or keep them engaged in a show, so that way they buy more drinks.
Got it. So saying that, are you that artist that wants to do that?
I'm a little like. Here's the thing.
I'm just
no,
curious.
and I appreciate you asking that question, because, like, I
don't get that vibe from you.
Right. And here's the
no
thing.
offense to those who do. You know.
No, of course. And I mean, here's the thing: is like, you know, I'm an open book with a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, like, it's about the people for me.
Gotcha.
And, you know, go back to your question again.
So basically, I'm saying, like, do you feel like you're that kind of artist that is okay with being on Broadway, entertaining, and taking requests?
Right. Yeah.
Because what that also being said is that Broadway is a very generic kind of one avenue, you know, genre of music. So is that for me, it's like, I love music in general. I love country, I love rock, I love hip hop, I love acoustic, I love it all. I like from the dirt to the city. I love it. But do you want to focus that's a one mind focus, I feel like. Like
it can be, but here's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I'm early in my, like, I mean, I've been doing this for a little while now, but I know I'm still very early into this. And there's a lot of stuff I have to discover. Like I said, I have a lot of life.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of experiences I want to have. There's this experience in front of me called Broadway, Nashville.
Period.
And I see all these people doing this, and I want a piece of it. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it forever. And, you know, people might say it's a trap or whatever it is.
Well, see, I love that. See, now I can get down with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but now I feel like a different, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you see where I was going with that? Like, okay, cool. I'm sorry.
I'm early in my career, and it's like, I have so much to learn. That's why I love being around all these people, is because they all have different experiences in this industry. And a lot of the people you see on stage are independent artists, and they do their own thing. But this is their 9 to 5. Quote
Got
unquote.
it. They
show up and they do their thing. They get their check or whatever they get. They distribute it to their musicians. They get their tips, and then they live off of that while they're not on the road or while their music's, you know, at a null.
Yeah.
You know? And it's, you know, I look at it as an opportunity to check out a different avenue of performing and a different avenue of musicianship, that there's nowhere on this planet that has a street quite like Broadway Nashville.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
I agree.
And
I totally agree.
There's nowhere where you can go into any floor of any bar from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m., 2:30 in the morning.
And just hear music all day long.
And hear music everywhere.
Yeah.
And see so many musicians that have all come to the same place to make music and to play with people that they may have never played with before, or the, you know, longtime friends with from high school that they decide to take a risk and come down here.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their story. And, you know, you can't look at it as like they're doing this and they're stuck in it. Not everybody's like that.
I agree. And I was just kind of throwing a fish.
No,
out
absolutely.
there.
And like, you know, but you're not the first person to say that to me either.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. And, you know, as I dive more,
I was fishing for more. That's what
of course. Yeah. And it you know, it was a great question and a great point to bring up. But these, you know, they're all working to, you know, make their dream happen however they have to. Just like me. I mean, like I said, I'm not just jumping into it without any job or any plan or whatever. I am taking as much of a methodical and strategic approach to it as I can. So that way I'm not ending up homeless, And so that way I can go to the gym, so
Yeah.
I can eat how I need to and still chase after that dream.
And you know what? I respect that. And like I said, like I want to be clear on this. I wasn't trying to disrespect it. This is an audience, you know, and for a lot, that is a point of view for people. A lot of people have that point of view. And it's a fair assessment to see a different side of like how people think about that.
Oh yeah.
And how you broke it down makes complete sense.
No, yeah.
Because me as a bartender on Broadway, I'm doing the exact same thing.
Mhm.
You know, so you really can't like compare apples to oranges when it's both a fruit, you know?
Yeah.
And I respect these artists out here 1000%. But like I said, this is a point of view podcast, and it gives people opportunity to like really tune in to see, you know, how people tick and how people operate here, and like and how it is to get to certain situations. It's not easy. It's not an easy task because one, our bills don't stop, and then two, our dreams don't stop. So when you put those two in the mix, it makes it kind of a slippery slope. You know, it's like, do I choose like what I want and my hopes and dreams, or do I choose not to be homeless, or do I choose not to be, you know, broke and have an actual life? And I think Broadway on Nashville gives us both those opportunities, you know, and I really, really appreciate what we have got taken care of at this point and what they have to offer us. And just like in all totality, I also thank you for sharing that part of you and your growth and your opportunities in Nashville. I really hope that everything works out. You know, I'm going to be on your team regardless. And we're going to be rooting for you, you know, and then hopefully vice versa. You'd be doing the same thing for us over here. You know, whenever things go on in Nashville, let me know. I'd love to come and support it, you know, get to know a little bit more about your music in general. But like I said, I really want to thank you for just really opening up to, you know, the world a little bit about like how it could be difficult to like get to a certain point. And why is it difficult to get to that point? I think you cross a lot of points, you know, that are very important for a lot of artists that might see this in the future, or a lot of people who live in Nashville who want to move to Nashville for music, because they don't get to see these journeys that we take, you know, whether it's a bartender, whether it's a engineering tech, whether it's a musician who's trying to be an engineering tech, or vice versa, you know. They don't get the opportunity to be able to see these journeys that we take, and it could probably help them catapult them to the next level. So like I said, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you for coming to the show. I want to get a take two with you, man. I feel like you got a lot more, you know, to tell us about, you know, the industry as far as the music is concerned.
Oh yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
man.
for sure. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is the life we choose. Life we choose. And honestly, I wouldn't